You're watching News Channel 11 in your corner at 6.
You can be in a crowd of 200 people and you still have that void in your heart, and it never goes away. No hours of the day does it ever go away.
Nearly 3 years after a drunk driver hit and killed a retired Tennessee Highway Patrol trooper, his family members sit down and share their vision of hope and justice. Good evening, I'm Sarah Diamond.
And I'm Josh Smith. Investigators said 20-year-old Jamie McLean was driving under the influence at the time of the head-on collision that killed retired Tennessee Highway Patrol officer Barry Myers. Nearly 3 years later, we hear from the Myers family for the first time. News Channel 11's Kylie McGivern sat down with the family as they awaited a decision from the parole board on whether McLean will serve the remainder of her 4.5-year sentence in jail.
As with many tragic stories, this one began innocently enough.
Like we do every Monday night, we would got in the truck to go sing together.
Brian Myers remembers his father, Barry, asking him what he wanted for his birthday the next week.
Wanted speakers for my truck.
That was the last conversation the father and son would have before Jamie McLean crossed the center lane of traffic and hit them head on.
When we were both trapped in the truck together, you know, I saw, of course, there was blood in the truck, and, you know, I could see and smell and hear everything.
The last conversation, but not the last words.
His last 2 words to me was, "Don't panic."
It took first responders an hour and a half to get Barry out of the car, while Brian watched from a distance, suffering just minor injuries. The retired trooper's life taken on one of the same roads he spent protecting drivers for 35 years.
My dad was always the glue that sort of held everybody together.
Barry Myers
the second because he hated Junior.
Counts writing his father's obituary among the obligations he, as the eldest, never imagined having to take on.
He was the level head. He was the one who could, in a moment of crisis, think and act, and then later on
rose to the top,
figure it out. And now, by default, that becomes me. And that's a pretty scary thing.
My dad, being the prepared guy that he is and the loving guy that he is, made each of us one of these.
An envelope he hoped his wife and children would never have to open because it reads open only in case of accident.
But as you can see, mine's worn and torn because I did indeed have an accident a long time ago, and I cried a lot. So I really ruined the
so
ink
those are
on
tear
there.
marks.
Those are tears. And these are too, because when I opened it, this is what my dad had written. Since you're reading this, you must be all right. That is the most important thing. Calm down. Read numbers 1 and 2. Be sure to do number 2. I'll take care of the rest. Remember, I love you. You can't be replaced. The car can.
But as Misty looks back,
this is 21 years old. So
it's what's missing from the letter that haunts her today.
What he didn't write on here was what happens when there's a horrible wreck and someone doesn't have an accident. They choose to impair themselves, and they choose to drive anyway.
McLean was convicted of vehicular homicide, reckless aggravated assault, driving under the influence, failure to drive on the right side of the roadway, along with possession of Lortab, Xanax, a sleeping pill, marijuana, and drug paraphernalia. She was sentenced in May of last year to 4.5 years in prison.
She's only going to serve a certain amount of time. We are sentenced to life without him.
The family is concerned about an early release.
My husband always lived and breathed the law. That was his, you know, he tried to enforce it for what's right. And I've been doing a lot of praying that, you know, it'll just be fair.
She does have time that she needs to serve.
In the meantime, the Myers family members hang on to what they can from the past. For Barry's only daughter, it's a token of his love.
And he would rub his thumb across our hand, and that's how he said, "I love you," when words would fail. The last time he did that, he was in the hospital dying. So all of us have his thumbprint in one way or another on us almost every day.
For his youngest, Brian, it's the words he says he will hold close for the rest of his life.
Don't panic.
Barry's wife, Chesteline, told me her family is working with Sullivan County to get a bridge on Highway 126 in Blountville named as in his memory. Now, Josh, as for whether McLean will remain in jail, since I sat down with the Myers family, the Tennessee Board of Parole decided to decline her parole. The next hearing isn't for another 2 years. And so, of course, I reached out to McLean's attorneys to get someone on her side, but they decided not to make a statement because they did not represent her in this hearing.
All right, Kylie McGivern tonight. Kylie, thank you. Sarah?